shine, squirt or shine.
Hi, my name is Manjin Kim, and this is another month's Gender Talk video. And last month I believe I was ranting about TERFs and making another video saying that I'm confused. Well, that's changed. I've now reached some clarity on gender. It's nothing I didn't already know, that my identity is genderqueer, that my preferred expression would be feminine, or at least androgynous feminine. It's the same thing I knew all along really, but I've been getting a little bit confused about am I this, am I that, am I the other. I'm a lot more clear on this at the moment. By the way, it's Christmas. I've got Bacardi and Coke. I've even got some of it here in my Iron Maiden mug. Got to throw that in. This is not scripted, by the way, and that's because I don't have a lot of time on my hands at the moment with Christmas and New Year, and I'm working very hard at the moment as well. I'm actually recording this on the 29th of December, even though it's not going to go out until the 4th of January. So, yeah. Anyway, I suppose to update my current thinking on that matter is that my gender, how I've always seen myself, my self-image of myself, if you like, is that I am androgynous, which, although it means in between the genders, in my case I think it's not a half man, half woman thing, or in between man and woman thing. My gender is not that of a man or a woman. It is a gender in its own right, and I choose to call the gender that I am androgynous. I feel like I'm physically male, and that's all that is. It's never meant anything else to me. You know, I'm in tune with my own body enough to take care of myself in terms of, you know, physical needs and stuff, you know, which I don't mean eating and drinking. But you know, I'm not defined by it, and I've never felt that I am. And all societal expectations of what a man is and what you're supposed to want to be like as a man, I just don't really feel connected to. I never have on some level. But I honestly don't think I'm a woman either. I think I've always seen myself as androgynous in spirit, which I suppose means partly male, partly female, but I seem to think that it's not so much in between. I seem to think I have a gender of my own, which is separate, like a third gender, and that's kind of what I'm rolling with at the moment in my current thinking on that matter. So that's my current understanding of it, and it does feel like I've reached a new clarity. I'm not a gender, I do have a gender. I'm not non-gendered as such. I'm not in between genders, or intergender it might be called. I don't like that half and half feel. I feel like I have my own gender. It's a separate gender, it's a third gender, it's androgynous, it's genderqueer, and that's what I call it, and that's where I'm at the moment on that. And yes, I don't like to appear masculine. I prefer to femininely express. I feel also my personality has a lot of femininity to it, but of course this kind of feminine or masculine personality thing is stereotypes really, isn't it? In terms of appearance, that's gender expression. So I may be feminine in gender expression, and then maybe that covers certain roles and traits that I feel I have as well. Again, I think that's all expression because it's outward manifestations of gender. But admittedly, I don't feel a need to be ultra feminine either. So it's a bit on the in-between side, even with expression. And gender identity, I definitely feel I'm not a man or a woman, I'm something else. Third gender, an androgynous gender. And that's what I'm rolling with at the moment, and it's making a lot of sense to me. Anyway, the topic of this video really is going to be labels. I want to talk about labels. Labels, what are labels? Do we need them? Should we get rid of them all? Or should we obsess over which label applies to us or to other people, the way a lot of people seem to do? Or what should we do about labels? What are labels? Labels are words that describe things. That's all they are. They're not anything else. They're not a reality in themselves. The reality is the reality in itself. Label is just a word that describes something. I think it's very important to start off with that level of clarity about what a label is. All a label is a word we use to describe something. So it's crazy to talk about let's get rid of them all. They might be useful. The whole reason we use labels is because they're useful for referring to things. Instead of blurting out a massive long sentence or paragraph or a bloody essay about what somebody is. You can just use a word to go to that. And as long as everyone understands what that word means, and as long as it does apply quite well to the reality in that situation, that's a useful label. The problem is, of course, when labels are not fit for purpose, do not describe reality adequately, or when labels are confused as to what people mean by them, so nobody quite knows what we're referring to when we use them, then they're kind of less useful in those situations. A lot of those situations in which they can become less useful do indeed apply a lot more frequently when a label is used of a group of people, which is where that argument of we'd be better off without them comes from. But you know, let's acknowledge a label is a word we use to describe things. It could be useful, it might not be, and it's not the reality, it's a word to describe reality. So with regards to that clarity, I decided to think on my gender and my sexuality and say, let's look at the reality first, and before we assign any labels to it. And basically when you look at my reality, it's this: I was born in a male body, with the penis and testicles. The sort of person I am, I like to be in tune with nature. I never bought those religious lies I was brought up to believe in about you should be at war with your body and its sexual needs and so forth. So I've always been quite in tune with my body in terms of caring for myself, which includes self-pleasure, and that's part of my whole gentle, in tune with nature spirit. I feel that I am a gentle, creative, quite elf-like being, and that I am, I've always had a kind of androgynous being to myself as well. And gender in terms of everything, the way we dress, the way we're supposed to act and everything, and even the labels and concepts themselves of man and woman, it doesn't mean an awful lot to me, and it never has, and I've always been a little bit bemused by it all. I bounce around in my androgynous bubble, and then I come face to face with society and its genderedness, and I've always been a little bit kind of, what the hell is this, and why should it matter? So that's my reality about gender and where it's coming from. Plus, more recently, I've discovered the joy I feel in expressing in terms of appearance with feminine things, and the joy that's bringing to me. But that's gender expression. And when we apply labels to that, it goes something like this: am I a man? No. Am I a woman? No. Am I transsexual? No. So am I a trans woman? No. Am I a trans man? Obviously not. Am I a cross-dresser? No. That doesn't make any sense in my instance. But am I genderqueer? Yes. Am I androgynous? Yes. That's how I've described myself. But am I agender? I don't think so. There are some terms I've toyed with: agender, bigender, gender fluid, which I really don't think are true. Intergender I don't even think is true anymore. I think I'm third gendered, and that gender is androgynous. Yeah. Sexuality is the same. It's like, you know, who will you sleep with? It's kind of easier to answer, isn't it? But again, the labels are not the reality. The reality is that I'm fully flexible about how someone identifies and what anatomy they have. I've noticed a tendency to be more attracted to people who are feminine or androgynous looking rather than masculine looking. But there are exceptions to every rule, and I'm open. I used to call this sexuality bisexual. A lot of people still do. The reality of being bisexual, by the way, is that if you're open to men, just being a sexual partner of men or women, that you will also be open to people who are non-binary. It tends to come along with the ride. But I'm aware that the term bisexual might be potentially problematic, so pansexual might be a preferable one. Personally, I quite like saying I'm just flexible. That's what I mean though. Labels are not realities. Labels are just words we use to describe reality. The important thing, it's always important to start with your reality. What is true of me without the labels? And then you can look at what does this label mean and how does it apply and would I want it to apply. An interesting caveat is the term transgender. Am I transgender? Well, the term transgender is strange because it seems to be taking on this kind of a term that transsexuals prefer in referring to themselves thing, but also taking on this, it's an umbrella term for anybody whose gender expression and gender identity does not match what society thinks it should be in terms of their biological sex, and which of course includes cross-dressers and genderqueer non-binary individuals. This means that socially I find it potentially misleading and confusing for people. So in social situations I'd rather avoid calling myself transgender, because I had an experience not so long ago of referring to myself as transgender to some very well-meaning allies. You know, one of them was transgender herself, and the other was her partner. So where, you know, the immediate response from one of them was, I thought trans men had beards usually, and the other one was, and then the other one later said to me when I was describing myself as genderqueer, I said like, oh, so you're not trans at all then. So it's problematic. It seems in some people's minds transgender means transsexual, and other people use it as an umbrella term. So this confusion means I would rather avoid calling myself that in social circles. However, I like the umbrella use of the word transgender. I like it politically. In political context, I would love to say, yes, I am part of the transgender family, and I stand here in solidarity with my transsexual sisters and my transsexual brothers and my cross-dressing siblings and my non-binary siblings as a transgender family. Politically, it's important for me to feel solidarity, not only with other non-binary people, but with cross-dressers and trans women and trans men as well. So there you are, and that's the whole thing about labels, you see. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work, and they're just labels. The reality is the reality. Labels are just words we try and talk about the reality with. So that's the end of this slightly non-scripted ad hoc version of Gender Talk. My name is Manjin Kim. Thanks for watching.
Or shy.